2025 has been a long and winding road, but man, there have been some good PC games. And you know what GameRanks does best? Listing them. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on GameRanks, the top 50 PC games of 2025. Now before we get going, just gonna toss out a quick little disclaimer. This is not in any particular order. Once we start doing like 50, it gets out of hand quick, so just regard this as 50 games we consider very worth it for your PC from this year. All right? And also keep in mind, we have a diverse array of opinions here, so we're bringing in a lot of stuff we think you might like from a lot of different angles. Without any more flim-flam, jibber-jabber, or whatever you want to call this, let's get moving with number 50. It's Dying Light: The Beast. After taking a sideways detour with Dying Light 2 that not everybody liked, The Beast is in many ways a return to form for the series, and while you can still see a lot of the second game's DNA in this thing, because it was originally meant to be an expansion before getting blown up into its own game, it manages to stand on its own. It's not high art, but it is a fun open world. It's got satisfying combat and a brisk pace that doesn't drag you down in tedium. It's just a nice, condensed, focused RPG in a world of massive, bloated open worlds. Not to say that this doesn't give you a nice, large environment to explore, certainly does. It just doesn't make you track down 3 of that item for a townsperson or some shit like that every 10 minutes. It's just some dumb zombie smashing fun that runs pretty damn well on PC. If that's what you're into, this is where to go. And we also hope you go to that subscribe button and click it, because believe it or not, a very, very low ratio of people who watch this channel, which is quite a few people, are subscribed. I mean, there's plenty of subscribers, but there's plenty more who ain't. So I'm just giving you a quick ask. It helps us out a ton. We hope it helps you see some stuff you want to see. Thanks for clicking subscribe. Let's get back to the video. And number 49 is Megabonk. Speaking of dumb fun, this out-of-nowhere Steam hit combines Vampire Survivors, Risk of Rain 2, and some pure stupidity to make one of the most flat-out entertaining games of the year. You run around, kill tons of monsters, get absurdly powerful until you eventually get overwhelmed, and then you do it again. Where most Vampire Survivor likes are pretty forgettable, this one stands out for A, being 3D, and B, for its absurd humor that might not necessarily work for everyone, but it's all in good fun. I like it. I think it gives the game a nice, jolly atmosphere. It's cheap, it's entertaining as hell, and it feels like an evolution of the formula instead of just a copycat. At number 48, it's Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, a huge step up over the original and an excellent open-world RPG in its own right. The second Kingdom Come game was a real surprise when it dropped early this year, not because it was good. We were all expecting at least a little bit of improvement over the first, but this was a big leap forward. It's not just a good RPG, it's one of the best games of the year. The story is immediately compelling and well told. The game mechanics have a lot more depth and complexity, but at the same time, the game isn't hard to get into. It is a difficult game, don't get me wrong, especially at first, but it's a game that's really hard to put down once it gets its claws in you, and that's great. As an RPG, it's pretty unusual, especially compared to something like Skyrim, but the focus on survival and simulation elements on top of the usual role-playing stuff makes it unique. Also, it looks fantastic and performs excellently on PC. At number 47, it's Sonic Racing Crossroads. With no chance of ever getting a Mario Kart on PC, this is the Mascot racing game to get this year if you don't have a Nintendo device. Actually, if you do have a Nintendo device, this might be the game to get, because it's really good. Might not be quite as great as All-Star Racing Transform, but it is far better than Team Sonic Racing. It brings back the multiple vehicle modes from Transform, but introduces a new gimmick, portals, which appear during a race and take you to small chunks of the track, but in a different dimension. It's kind of like the highway parts of Mario Kart World, but better because they're actually designed with an interesting track in mind. It's a gimmick that you might think would detract from the usual racing, but it actually works. It adds. It doesn't feel overused, doesn't feel tedious, just adds a little fun wrinkle to the usual racing, and mechanically everything works really great. The power-ups are fun, they don't feel too overpowered, and the individual tracks look great. Solid selection right from the start of the game. Crossworlds doesn't break the Mascot racing game mold as much as you might think, and what it does very well. It's a great racing game. At number 46, it's Hell Is Us, easily one of the most interesting games of 2025. Hell Is Us is a puzzle/exploration/Souls-like, and even with all those modifiers, it doesn't really explain exactly what this game is. It looks like your average Souls game, but with a more contemporary setting. But what makes this game different is how the combat is sort of de-emphasized. The bosses in big battles are easily the worst parts of the game. The real meat and potatoes of it is the exploration, the clues, finding and unlocking of secrets, all that kind of crap. There's a fascinatingly weird investigation game going on here where you're uncovering the strange secrets and history of this made-up Central European nation. That's the real driving force in the game, rather than the combat, which is functional. It's not bad by any stretch, but the design of the world and the disturbing details of the civil war that's ongoing is far more intriguing. At number 45, it's Total Chaos, made by the guy who did Turbo Overkill. This game is actually a completely overhauled version of his original Doom mod, which is also worth checking out. Rather than being a balls-to-the-wall action game you might expect from the name, it's a survival horror game to its core with limited resources and a large interconnected set of environments to explore. Crafting is an essential part of the game as you slap together various resources to build weapons and healing items. Tons of monsters are smacking around, and for the most part, Total Chaos sticks to the traditional model of survival horror games. You're constantly exploring, solving little puzzles, and encountering new enemies. What really makes Total Chaos work, though, is how it's constantly mixing things up. The game loves to throw new and unexpected horrors at you that you may not know how to deal with first time through. You will die a lot, to be clear. But even with a fixed save system, it never feels too frustrating because it's like if there's something truly dangerous, the game's nice enough to throw you an autosave before it. It's a game that's more tense than flat out scary, but it's really well designed, and it's a fun survival horror game. Good luck getting the good ending, though. No human on the planet is going to figure that out the first time through. And number 44 is Stellar Blade. The former PlayStation exclusive came to PC in 2025, and it's still really good for what it is. The game's not afraid to make its inspirations clear. It's a Souls game mixed with some Nier Automata, and it's a really well-made and fun game that's, yes, pretty derivative, and yes, very sexy lady, make game fun, but I mean, it just feels good to play. Totally aside from the influences and the obvious visual appeal it is going for, it's well paced, the boss fights are fun, it's a little more forgiving than a typical Souls-like, and it incorporates, like I said, a little bit of the flash from something more like Nier Automata, or that sort of direction of spectacle action games. The story's gibberish, and a lot of the voice acting feels kind of amateur hour, but everything else about the production is very high quality and generally well made. It's a game that's just generally better than a lot of people expected it to be. Like, it's not just skating by on an attempt to appease people who want a sexy protagonist. It's a good game. And number 43 is Ball X Pit. It's Breakout on steroids, but actually it's more than that. It's a kind of a Tetris city builder, a bullet hell shooter, and a roguelike. Ball X Pit is a really fun and surprisingly unique game where at its most basic level you're bouncing a ball back and forth to break blocks, but it quickly gets a whole lot more complicated than that. There's a ton of variety to each run, many different ball types that completely change how each ball behaves, and again, the whole city building layer that happens between runs. The city stuff is probably the weakest part of the game, but it does add a lot of strategy that I appreciate, and I appreciate it when roguelikes give you something to do between runs. But it's like the ball bouncing part that we're here for, obviously, and that part's fantastic. At number 42, it's Battlefield 6. They finally just made the game Battlefield fans have been asking for, and it's not perfect, but the core Battlefield experience, it's what we've wanted for a long time, and it's here. Yes, the Battle Royale stuff and the focus on some infantry-level engagements might be seen as negatives among the hardcore faithful, but in general, I think this game is pretty exceptional. Very, very fun. There's nothing out there quite like a Battlefield game when it's firing all cylinders, and it is. I mean, the campaign isn't super good or anything, but it's better than Black Ops 7, to say the very least. If you're playing this game, it's probably for the multiplayer anyway, so whatever. It's got some problems. No DICE launch game can be completely free of problems, but in general, this is a really good game. And number 41 is Absolum. If there's a genre of game perfectly suited for the roguelike treatment, it is the beat 'em up. These games are generally short, they encourage multiple playthroughs, and they're mechanically pretty simple, so if anything, it's kind of surprising that it took this long to get a game like Absolum. Created by some of the developers of Streets of Rage 4, obviously top-notch beat-em-up stuff, this game also critically both a very good beat-em-up and a fun roguelike with a ton of overpowered abilities to unlock. It's honestly closer to Hades than something like Binding of Isaac, in that you're most likely not going to be able to finish a run from the start, but the progression system is satisfying, and the branching paths you can take actually add some mystery and wonder to the world. Very entertaining game, can be played either solo or co-op, and it deserves a lot more attention than it got. At number 48, it's Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. This throwback to the classic games in the series was made by the guys behind the Blasphemous games, but is critically not a Metroidvania. It's just a normal game with normal levels you progress through to reach the end. It's intentionally old school in the best possible way. It took this long, but we finally got a new game in the style of the original NES game, only with excellent modern pixel art graphics and silky smooth controls. There's not a whole lot else to it. It's just a really well-made game in the style of the originals, but with modern sensibilities. Might sound like I'm being a little bit dismissive, but I think that's high praise. The original Ninja Gaiden is a classic and a reason to want more. And number 39, it's Jurassic World Evolution 3. It's a theme park-style top-down building game, but with the Jurassic Park license. The concept is a slam dunk, and the first two games had promise, but the third game feels like the most realized version of the concept. It's got a fully fleshed out campaign mode, excellent presentation, the presence of Mr. Jeff Goldblum himself, and the addition of baby dinosaurs and dino mating. It adds a lot more depth to the strategy of park building. I love the little unnecessary but fun details this game has, like you can drive around your park or fly a helicopter. It's a game that's designed to be fun without skimping on the depth to make it a satisfying building game. It also looks incredible from far away or from up close. The only real downside is the premise is tied to the nonsense Jurassic World story, but other than that, the game's excellent. It's a great use of the Jurassic Park license in gaming, and it's just a great park builder. At number 38, it's Pipistrello and the Cursed Yoyo. This Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening-inspired top-down action game is a real standout, not just because of its distinct art style, but just how rock-solid the damn game is. It's really a game that gets the fundamentals, an extremely well-designed game from top to bottom. The gimmick is it uses a yo-yo as a weapon, which can bounce off angled walls and perform other tricks to get around or solve puzzles. The city environment, very charming. They're always throwing new twists on the gameplay at you to keep everything fresh. You'd think with only a yo-yo as a weapon, the game would start running out of ideas pretty quick, but it doesn't. It just keeps coming up with new and creative ways to challenge you, and it's not an easy game. Not overly hard, but not easy. It's just the right kind of difficulty that keeps your mind active. And just if you're wondering, Pipistrello is Italian for bat. The little dude's a bat. He plays a bat. At number 37 is Mafia: The Old Country. In a world where linear story-driven, high-budget games are becoming more and more rare, Mafia: The Old Country is a nice big old breath of fresh air. Doesn't have the most groundbreaking story or the most innovative action, but what it does have are just gorgeous visuals, a solid script, an excellent score, a tightly constructed main story that keeps things going. It's very much a movie told in a video game, and while that sort of approach is kind of quaint these days, it's really nice to just play a damn game, get a story, and get out without a whole lot of padding there to inflate the runtime. And while this game isn't that complex, it's still the most mechanically interesting modern Mafia game. The shooting is solid enough, and the climactic knife fights are fun and appear just infrequently enough that you're not groaning every time they start. Setting's also really unique, gives the game a little bit of Wild West flavor to the usual mobster antics. Not a game that's going to blow anyone's minds, but an old-fashioned good time. And number 36, it's Dispatch. Out of the many attempts to revive the old Telltale formula of episodic adventure games, Dispatch is clearly the most successful and also my personal favorite. Sure, the choices don't actually matter that much. The game is even more of a visual novel than usual. You can't really even walk around freely anymore. Still one of the best of these types of games. The animation is excellent across the board, has some amazingly well choreographed action sequences peppered throughout the game's 8 episodes. The cast is charming, voice acting is great from top to bottom. Script can be a little rough and juvenile at times, but the parts that matter, they really work. And that's not even talking about the game's central dispatch mechanic, where you're mission control, deploying a squad of heroes on missions. It's simple but surprisingly addictive, and including this extra bit of gameplay adds a lot to the overall experience. Could have just been a straightforward story game, but the central dispatch part makes it feel like more than just a Telltale copycat. At number 35 is Cultic Chapter 2. The original Cultic was one of the best boomer shooters of the past few years, and the standalone release of Chapter 2 is bigger and badder in every possible way. Some people complain the levels are too long or the last boss is too hard or whatever, but just ignore them because it's easily one of the best, most satisfying shooters of the year. The way this game is able to bounce between horror and action is just super impressive. Nothing changes, just the atmosphere, and yet they make it work in a way almost no other shooter can. Level design is super varied. The new weapons they're satisfying, very satisfying. It's more cultic, but it's more creative and weird than the first episode. The game's grungy color palette may take a little getting used to, but spend enough time with it, you'll see it's actually one of the best looking retro shooters out there right now. Just a great game all around. At number 34, it's Dynasty Warriors Origins. Took a while, but we finally got a new Dynasty Warriors game worthy of the name with Origins. They simplified things a little bit here. You're mostly playing as a single protagonist instead of bouncing around between multiple different characters, but the game still lets you character swap mid-battle in certain skirmishes. Most important thing is that they've taken the time to really nail the combat and make it feel smooth. There's more mechanical depth to the combat here than ever has been seen by the series. If you remember, I did the Before You Buy on Dynasty Warriors 9, and this is just one of my favorite series. I love Dynasty Warriors. They just fucked it up so bad with that game. And really, the best Dynasty Warriors games were the Hyrule Warriors games for quite a while there. And this, I think, is a nice return to form. Like, they actually have to whittle down enemy armies again. Like, they put you in battles that require you to bounce around between your allies and assist them when needed, instead of just dull corridors you need to mindlessly clear out. The mission design is just a lot more fun. The combat is way more fun. The overworld that ties everything together is actually charming, gives you a lot of side activities to do with the big battles. It's Dynasty Warriors at its core, but it's one of the best games in the series so far, and just so much better than the attempt to make an offline MMO with Dynasty Warriors 9. What the hell was that shit? At number 33 is Schedule 1, another one of those games that hit the community out of nowhere. Schedule 1's a game that might not look like a lot, but it's super well designed and very entertaining, with an amusingly subversive premise. You're a drug dealer, which is a concept that has been done before, but in much worse games. This one's actually really fun, from the basic activities of growing and distributing drugs to the more high-level stuff like managing staff, dealing with rival cartels. The game is in early access, but there's already a ton to do in it, and while the cadence of updates has been slow, they always manage to add some pretty new features every couple of months. It's a good game that's got a lot of development left to go, but it's already great enough to pick up. At number 32 is Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon, a quasi-open-world RPG. Its souls combined with Skyrim in almost every way that counts. They drop you into these large, open environments with tons of little dungeons and caves and side quests to explore and little bits of loot all over the place. But you start out as a total chump who will crumple if somebody looks at you funny. Mechanically, very similar to Skyrim, but a lot more dangerous and deadly, a lot more reactive choices that can affect the outcome of various regions. The game doesn't always look great, but it manages to punch way above its weight with the environmental design, because each region, it's relatively small, so they sneak in a bunch of bespoke elements to almost every major side area, which makes exploration feel especially rewarding. It's difficult, and at times it's a janky game, but it's got ambition that makes up for all the shortcomings. With no Elder Scrolls for years to come, this is probably the next best thing we're going to get, and it's pretty damn good. At number 31, it's Kingdoms of the Dump. Steam sees dozens, if not hundreds, of forgettable old-school RPGs coming out every year, and most of them are pretty mediocre to absolutely bad, but this game is something special. It's not just that the fantasy world is a literal garbage dump inhabited by sentient trash cans, it's actually a well-made RPG. Designed by people who clearly love old-school RPGs like Final Fantasy VI and Super Mario RPG, so they tried to make a game that included elements from those games. And I have to say right off, like, they nailed it in terms of the look. You wouldn't think that a trash-themed RPG would be absolutely fantastic looking, but it's got, like, this look that feels like Final Fantasy VI by way of Chrono Trigger with some Super Mario stuff in there. And I don't mean actually Super Mario RPG, like kind of more Mario World. But gameplay-wise, it's fast-paced, battles are quick. It actually has some tactical depth, and the exploration is fun and fluid. You can jump all over the place. They're hiding treasures all over. The story's appropriately goofy, lighthearted, but with enough intrigue to keep it interesting. It's also just a nice-looking game. The music is fantastic. It's a game with the best elements of old-school games, while also throwing in some modern design sensibilities. A little rough around the edges at launch, but otherwise really well worth checking out. At number 30 is Hades 2. Hades, but more. That's really all that needs to be said. The original Hades is very good, and this game is also great. Review done. I mean, Hades 2 does deserve more attention. It is impressive how they were able to expand on the game with new weapons, an entirely unique set of skills, while making it feel like the same game. In some ways, I like the weapons and abilities more this time around. They had room to get a little weird with it, which you always have to appreciate that. And the additional stages make it so you're less likely to hit a brick wall in the early game. Hades 2 is still about making incremental progress in the roguelike mode, but they bring it to a bunch of main story events and branching paths and characters and unique encounters. It takes a long time before the game starts feeling repetitive. It's just a high-polished, beautiful game, well-made roguelike, easy to recommend for anybody who liked the first game or just likes roguelikes or even just likes kind of Diablo-ish games. I don't want to pigeonhole it as a Diablo-like because I wouldn't call it that. But somebody who likes Diablo is going to like Hades too, I would think anyway. At number 29, it's Wuchang Fallen Feathers. This Chinese history-focused Souls-like has a lot going for it. And while the developers' post-launch decisions have been somewhat baffling, the core game here is really solid. Where so many Souls-likes focus on combat above everything else, Wuchang has been kind enough to remember that level design is a big reason why these games are so good. The game has this massive interconnected environment that circles back in on itself in interesting and surprising ways. It's got a lot of optional branching paths and tons of unique weapons and armor to collect, as well as a ton of varied and fun bosses to fight. Not as brutally challenging as a lot of other games in this genre, but it's not a pushover either. The combat's super responsive and satisfying. There's a solid selection of weapons to pick from. Also, it looks gorgeous and grotesque in equal measure. There's some gnarly looking enemies in the game that give it a distinctly Bloodborne feeling, and I mean, there's just a lot of game here and a lot to keep you busy. At number 28, it's Split Fiction. The follow-up to It Takes Two might be a little lacking in the personal stakes that game had, but it makes up for it by being all-around bigger and just a better adventure as a whole. This game is another co-op adventure from Hazelight, but like their last game, you only need one person to own it in order to play it online with your friends. The game includes excellent couch co-op, so it's just about as easy to play, assuming somebody else wants to play it with you anywhere else in the world or in the same room. Story of the game has you bouncing around between sci-fi and fantasy worlds, getting new powers that help you solve puzzles and deal with enemies with these exciting and ever-evolving scenarios that are mixing things up and propelling you forward. The game, it's expertly paced, fast, fun, it looks incredible. The only real negative is the story, which is kind of silly. I wouldn't call outright terrible. Like, it's fine, not gonna light the world on fire, but that's not why you're playing this game. At number 27 is Promise Mascot Agency, easily one of the weirdest games of the year. Even trying to describe this thing's fairly difficult, other than, I mean, it's a visual novel. But it's one where you manage a mascot agency and you recruit sentient mascots who are these living creatures who look like they're wearing theme park costumes, but they just look like they're that. That's what they are. It's also an open world driving game where you explore an island, compete with time trials, and find collect. It just defies explanation, this one. Just one of those games you gotta play. Insane premise, core management aspect is a lot of fun, driving town stuff, a lot of fun. Might feel a little overwhelming at first, trying to juggle all the clocks ticking down, but the game really isn't as unforgiving as it might seem, and the story is so bizarre, but also strangely compelling. And number 26 is Cronos: The New Dawn. Bloober Team's follow-up to the Silent Hill 2 remake confirms that was not a fluke. This game's super different from that one. It's more like Dead Space than anything else, but what's unique about it is its strange, mostly unexplained setting and its high difficulty. Most games like this try to appear stingy with resources, but they generally give you more than you could ever really need. This game does not just appear stingy. You will be resource-starved right from the beginning, and it does eventually even out as you learn how to efficiently conserve ammo, but that takes a while to get to that point. If you're not careful with this game, you can and will run out of ammo and healing items. This doesn't play around with the survival element of survival horror. Outside of that, it's just a well-constructed game, carefully designed environments, mostly rational puzzles, effective scares, general air of dread over everything. Difficulty might be a bit of a turnoff for some, but I never found it particularly frustrating. To me, it just makes the experience tense compared to the usual survivor horror experience. I really like Cronos: The New Dawn. And number 25 is Abiotic Factor. This game asks the simple question, what if survival game but Half-Life? It's one of those perfect ideas for a game that's rarely properly realized, but this is as good as it should be. The underground science complex you're trapped in is immense, but none of it is randomly generated, specifically built, and that makes exploring its halls a real joy. There's a ton of variety, not just the locations, but the dangers that you can encounter, from strange science creatures to aliens to full-blown SCP and folklore monsters. They're always mixing things up and give you new challenges to overcome as you slowly expand your reach. Eventually, you start getting alternate dimension stuff going on, which adds another wrinkle to the whole thing. Just an excellent survival game. Doesn't have the staying power of a more randomized survival game, but other than that, it's really good. At number 24 is Ender Magnolia Bloom in the Mists, a Metroidvania that came out early access, early 2025, in a genre that's overloaded with games, but it does stand out. The developers took what worked about the first game and improved upon it pretty well. It's got better controls, feels more natural to jump in this game, which is, really good in this type of a game, obviously. Combat's a lot smoother, more options for the types of attacks you can unleash. Environments are more varied, I'd say. Maybe a little more linear, though, than its predecessor. The level design is just some of the best in the genre, though. Interesting, varied environments, like I said. Tons of unique enemies, boss monsters. There's a bunch of stuff to find. There's abilities to unlock, strange new enemies to encounter. It's just a good game that owes a lot to Hollow Knight, but has enough of a unique identity that it manages to stand alone. At number 23, it's Ninja Gaiden 4. After the abysmal Ninja Gaiden 3, I wasn't sure we'd ever get a new game in the series. With Team Ninja busy with the Neo games, the chances of a proper follow-up to some of the best action games of all time felt slim, but Platinum came in, and along with Team Ninja, they made Ninja Gaiden 4, and I would call it a true return to form to a series that lost its way. It's not exactly the same game as Ninja Gaiden Black, for instance. You can clearly feel the Platinum influence on the combat and the general flow, but damn, does it feel good to get a good Platinum game. Especially, I would almost call this a spiritual successor to Metal Gear Rise and Revengeance. Like, the parries work almost exactly the same as that game. And the bunch of cyborg enemies you encounter, they feel right out of that game as well. There's still a whole lot more going on here. There's blood powers that give you temporary soup-ups for your attacks, new main character to play as, but most importantly, it feels like it belongs alongside the original Xbox game. You got stuff like the ultimate technique and the Azuna drop. The story somehow is even thinner than the old games, but a lot of the art design defaults to monochromatic grays and browns. That's kind of also right out of the originals, but the combat is just some of the best we've seen from Platinum, which is really saying something. At number 22, it's Silent Hill F. Hey, are you in 1960s rural Japan and do you have Silent Hill syndrome? You don't? Well, Hinako Shimizu does. And the little town of Ibisugaoka, oh man, goes Silent Hill on her ass. You got the fog rolling in and all the Lovecraftian fever dream stuff happening to her. It's one of the fastest selling entries in Silent Hill's history, which is actually pretty wild. All things considered, the last stretch of time has been very good to Silent Hill fans. Between the Silent Hill 2 remake and this, and let's be serious, this game's got very good graphics. Of course, it runs smoothest and nicest on PC. That's how you want to have your sanity messed with. Nice, buttery, smooth PC graphics. This game has got an absolutely haunting world. It is beautiful in terms of art direction. Like, it introduces a lot of color to Silent Hill that you wouldn't necessarily expect. But then again, it's a little bit different of a Silent Hill game. You got a couple of minor Souls-like mechanics in there. Not enough that I would call it a Souls-like, though it's still very much a Silent Hill game. At number 21 is AI Limit. One of those games that doesn't make a great first impression. You'd assume the worst of all the big Souls-like released on Steam this year, but it's actually one of the highest rated games of the year, and for good reason, I think. It's a solid game, far better than first impressions are going to lead you to believe. It's clearly a game made with a more limited budget than something like Wuchang, but where it's lacking in flashy visuals, it makes up for in solid Souls-like design fundamentals. Combat isn't even all that good. Can feel a little unresponsive and stiff, but the exploration and atmosphere of this weird post-apocalyptic world is what makes the game great, as does its strange as hell bosses and many satisfying secrets. I know we're suckers for Souls-like games. We're going to play them, pretty much all of them. Maybe we're a little bit less hard on the genre than I'm sure some would like us to be, but I would say that there are good ones and bad ones, and I would say this one is a good one despite all appearances. And number 20 is Digimon Story Time Stranger. It's not just a solid, if possibly better, alternative to this year's Pokemon game. It's also available on PC. There's even a fairly lengthy demo you can try out if it's something you might be interested in but aren't sure. Long story short, it's really good. It's a strange and twisty time-traveling RPG with monster collecting. Also a game that just tells you, like, how selective Nintendo is with their lawsuits. Obviously, they have a pretty good working relationship with Bandai Namco and have worked with them throughout the years. Like, several of the Star Fox games came out of there. But no, the little guy doing Pokemon with guns, they're copying. Digimon's, yeah, they're not copying. There's no reason to enforce copyright on this one, right? I don't know, I just like to shit on that bullshit for a second. The fun of these games, the Digimon games, isn't necessarily in collecting monsters. You essentially get them for free after defeating enough of them in combat. But the evolving of your creatures is really the highlight here. Every Digimon has a ton of new forms, and they unlock constantly, which is always pushing you forward to progress and unlock even more creatures. The combat's clever, the presentation is the best in the series, and it's all fast, particularly for an old-school turn-based RPG. Not just a decent Digimon game, but actually one of the best turn-based RPGs of the year. Oddly enough, 2025 is a year where saying that actually means something too. At number 19, it's Escape from Duckov, another little game that caught us all by surprise. The ridiculously named Escape from Duckov sounds like some shovelware junk angling for meme reviews that push engagement, but against all odds, it's actually a really good game. The name isn't just a bunch of random words thrown together either. It's an extraction shooter where you play as a duck. That's the game. But instead of the high-tension multiplayer of Tarkov, it's a single-player extraction game where you explore, collect resources, build up your underground base by building various stations, workbenches, and supply shops, and slowly get stronger as you take on increasingly dangerous areas. The top-down shooting is highly deadly and tactical, feels almost like Hotline Miami at times, and the progression system is well-paced and rewarding. It does slow down a little at the end, gets a little grindy, but at that point it's otherwise, I mean, you've had a lot of fun up to that point, so it might as well get difficult in some way. It's a really fun and smartly designed game. At number 18, it's the first Berserker Khazan, one of the rare subgenre of Neo-likes. This game is shockingly well made and long, despite being a spin-off from Dungeon Fighter Online made by developers with zero experience in the genre. They clearly learned from the best because this game is damn good. The controls in particular feel spot on. Even every parry, and there are a lot of parries here, it feels right though. The feedback's absolutely excellent. They nailed the combat, and that's good because this game can be difficult. Nearly every boss is an uphill struggle. They're all very well designed. They feel like a fair challenge, though they don't pull BS on you. Combined with the difficulty, the length of this game can make it exhausting to play after a while, but even if it can get frustrating, it is an astoundingly well-made game. If you've got the patience for it, there's just a ton to like here. And number 17 is Shinobi Art of Vengeance, made by Lizard Cube, the other half that worked on Streets of Rage 4. This game is something very different, not just from that game, but from other old-school throwbacks, like Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. It's a side-scrolling, quasi-semi-kinda Metroidvania-ish, but still level-based game with a combo-based combat system reminiscent highly of spectacle action games. Also has a central mechanic where you can instantly kill all the enemies on screen that have had their stamina depleted with the press of a button. Well, 2 buttons. I don't know, this is one of the most entertaining games of the year. I freaking love Shinobi Art of Vengeance. You are to play this game. There is a demo available. I simply must put my foot down on this. You must play this game. Play the demo. If you like it, buy it. It's $30 full price. It's generally on sale. This is a criminally overlooked game. Criminally. Arrests should be made, is what I'm saying here. And number 16 is Once Upon a Katamari. The Katamari series returns to form with the true successor to We Love Katamari. This game in every way feels like a lost sequel, looks in every way like a PlayStation 2 game in action. It's only because the levels are bigger with more stuff going on in the background that this would be not possible on an aging console. These things do reveal it to be a modern game. Funny thing is, even though it's intentionally going for this retro look, the gameplay is as fresh as vibrant as it ever was. There's a simple pleasure in rolling up everything that you can get in a short amount of time. This game tries to mix things up a little by introducing a few new gimmicks that aren't the best, but they're pretty rare compared to the regular old rolling. And with the game being significantly longer than any previous Katamari game, with a lot more levels to explore, the rare few dud levels don't ruin the experience. It's literally more Katamari, but considering that throughout the Xbox 360 era and beyond, they were just recycling old stuff and trying to sell it to us again, getting some new Katamari is a big deal, especially when it's something exactly like the old games, but also an improvement. I don't know how that works, but that's what this game is. At number 15, it's Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4. With the Switch 2 launch, we got an actual for-sale version of Deltarune, the long-anticipated follow-up to Undertale. The launch situation is confusing, but all you really need to know is that Chapter 3 and 4 are the new stuff. They're extremely good. They're some of the best stuff we've seen in this series. Creative, emotional, ridiculous, funny, sometimes pretty damn sad. And the whole thing has this unease to it, just a feeling that it could all go bad at any moment. There's just nothing out there quite like Deltarune. It's not finished, though. This isn't a complete game, and it ends on a cliffhanger, and who knows when all the proposed 7 chapters will be out, but this one is an easy recommend for anyone who has fondness for Undertale, or just strange, funny, and subversive RPGs in general. At number 14 is Baby Steps, Fat Man Fall Down the Game. This game is ridiculous, stupid as hell, and by all accounts shouldn't work, but it does. It is buggy, the humor is often intentionally designed to be as annoying as possible, but that's just part of the experience. Despite that, there's still just something weirdly zen about Baby Steps. There's something almost soothing about walking this goober around with separately operating legs over increasingly difficult terrain. It's infuriating, but also kind of fun in a slow, sometimes tedious way. It's a game which has an impact that's hard to describe without sounding like navel-gazing. It's a game that could easily be dismissed as bad. Got a lot of actual for-real problems like bugs, but it's still inexplicably fun to turn on and wander around for a while. It's a game that flies in the face of traditional review practices, and while there are plenty of people out there that may or may not like it, GameRanks certainly, all of us have differing opinions on it, but we can't help but all respect it. At number 13 is Tempest Rising. This is about the closest thing we're ever going to get to a Command and Conquer revival that, I think is likely anyway. So thankfully, it's quite good. It's an old school RTS revival in a modern package. Basically plays like if they made a new Command and Conquer game this year, which includes a little bit of indie awkwardness, but a surprisingly amount of polish for what you get. It's a great looking game. Controls well, has sensible modern hotkeys, and some unique ideas for the factions. Mostly spiritual successor to CNC, wears a series influence on its sleeve, very heavily, not trying to hide it, but they do at least bring in some unique ideas, like the not GDI's use of Intel as a resource, for example. Campaign's well constructed and entertaining. The music is excellent, the design is solid. It's maybe the best modern RTS that is not simply a remake of an old one from the late 90s or early 2000s. Sure, still kind of looks like a remake, but in practice it's different enough to stand on its own. At number 12 is No, I'm Not a Human. This short but supremely creepy experience is all about identifying whether the person you're talking to is an actual person, because if they're not, they're probably going to kill you. This is a game built entirely on creepy vibes, and it does it very well with grotesque figures wandering around in the darkness outside your apartment and menacing you in strange and inexplicable ways. Not a lot to do in it, gets by a lot on style though, and for a horror game, it's all you need. At least this horror game. I'm sure something else wouldn't necessarily work, but this works. At number 11 is R.E.P.O. Take Lethal Company, crank it up to 11, and insert some memes into it, and you got R.E.P.O., the newest game in the team-based garbage collecting game where you're also hunted by ghosts genre of multiplayer nonsense game. This thing is just pure fun if you got the right group for it, kind of miserable if you don't, so I would really only recommend if you have some friends that want to play with you, because it's not built for single player or for public games. It's just not that much fun played that way. Get in with some pals and it's a blast, though. The physics-based interactions make even basic interacts feel chaotic, and the variety of any types you encounter always keeps you on your toes. They just keep adding more stuff to the game to the point where it can be practically overwhelming, but the game isn't about winning, it's about finding the funniest ways to fail, and it does that very well. And number 10 is Sword of the Sea. This exploration puzzle game hasn't been getting much attention, but it's the next game from the developers behind Abzu and The Pathless, both great games. Sword of the Sea continues the hot streak. You're a little dude who rides a sword like a surfboard, traveling around and restoring the world, similar to something like Okami or Prince of Persia, the 2008 Prince of Persia. It's meditative, but a fun experience as you blast through relatively simple but beautifully rendered environments on a mission to restore the ocean to a world taken over by sand. bland. It's essentially a movement puzzle game, similar to other stuff that they've done, but with more fun and refined movement. It's a game that's entertaining just to play. You don't really have to do anything to have fun in it. They got the sense of speed and flow so right here, most people probably should check it out. I really think it's a good one. And number 9 is Legend of Heroes Trials in the Sky First Chapter. Remake of the cult classic PSP RPG is so much more than a mere next-gen update of an aging game. We've seen a lot of remasters and remakes of RPGs lately, but they don't do a whole lot to update the games for a modern audience. This one way does. It's got an innovative new combat system that allows you to attack enemies in real time or instantly switch to a turn-based mode for more difficult fights. It's sort of like how Metaphor ReFantazio does it, but more active. It rewards you with extra attacks if you manage to drain an enemy stamina bar for quick combat, and then you can switch to turn-based. In some ways, it kind of reminds me of Grandia 2, I think, on the Dreamcast and PS2, but it's not quite like that. It's just got that kind of flippy-turny thing. Metaphor ReFantazio does too. It definitely is, I think, a little more different from that than Metaphor ReFantazio, but it does do some clever stuff here. The rest of the game is also just as elegantly designed, retains the stuff everyone liked about the original game. Keyword here is charm. This is a very charming game, from the creators to the generally pretty low-stakes plot for an RPG, but tons of charm. And number 8, it is The Alters, Mickey 13, the game. Not really. Kind of a forgotten game. Took some big creative risks, and they mostly paid off. Basic idea, you make clones of yourself who are actually alternate universe versions of your main character if he'd gone down a different path in life. There's also an XCOM-like base layer that's a giant wheel that rolls through an alien world that you're trapped on. You have surface exploration, RPG-like choices. You got to do stuff to keep your alters happy, and this game gives you a lot to juggle in it. I mean, all that sounds like total nonsense, but it works surprisingly well all together. And while it maybe isn't as reactive and freeform as some people might expect, it mostly follows a linear story that you're playing through, but it's still an interesting and weird game. And number 7 is the Roottrees Are Dead, an investigation game. Basically, like if you took out the boat from the Obra Dinn and replaced it with the internet. It's an intuitive and clever puzzle game, primarily about research and filling in the blanks. You need to figure out who people are, what their relationship to each other is, and what their jobs are, which you'd think would be easy, but it's often anything but, forcing you to rely on context cues and reinterpreting incorrect or misunderstood information to find the real answer. Presentation kind of sparse, but in a way that suits the sort of game they're aiming for here. It's a great puzzle game. It's cheap. I think you should check it out. And number 6 is Blueprints. On the opposite end of the puzzle game spectrum is Blueprints. It's an absolutely massive game that starts off complicated and only balloons in difficulty from there. What makes it unique is how it combines traditional puzzle elements with roguelike gameplay. It may be a turnoff for some people, but it makes the game pretty creative with some of its puzzle designs by incorporating that run-based random structure. There's a lot of hard-coded puzzles and solutions in the game, though. There's a lot of progress to be made outside of the roguelike room, shuffling in the main part of the game. That's where the deeper mysteries of Blueprints reveal themselves to you. It is an excellent puzzle game that can in times feel overwhelming, and it is not for everyone. I'm not gonna say, like, it's my favorite game. There are other people here at GameRanks that like it a lot more than I do. I respect it, though, and if you're willing to get really invested in a puzzle game, this one can keep you busy for a long time. And number 5 is Look Outside. This little game based on an indie game jam idea and mostly made by just one guy is one of the strangest, most uncomfortable, but fascinating games of the year. Doesn't look like much. Mostly made in RPG Maker after all, but the artwork is so distinct and twisted and the writing is so interesting that it's hard not to get invested in the nightmarish world they've created here. Gameplay-wise, it's like a much more player-friendly version of Fear and Hunger, where the survival mechanics are prominent. You can and will die often, saving is limited, and that makes the experience of exiting your apartment and venturing out into the building genuinely feel dangerous. Actual gameplay is a lot more forgiving, though. It's challenging at first for sure, but not overwhelmingly so. What we're really here for are the truly bizarre creature designs and oddball writing that manages to be relatable, often charming, and also absolutely horrifying in ways that few games manage. It's amazing, and they recently put out a big 2.0 update that expands and improves almost every aspect of the game, so now's the best time to try that out. At number 4 is Arc Raiders, an extraction shooter that's been exploding in popularity for good reason. It's a pretty damn fun game, well made, and they managed to do the impossible, made the people on the internet collectively decide completely on their own to work together rather than against each other. Maybe that's down to the game's surprisingly friendly community, and yeah, part of it does come down to the design, but it's still surprising to see. Most extraction shooters say that you'll never know what'll happen when you encounter another person. Might make friends with you, might try to kill you, but in practice, 99% of the time they try to kill you. In Arc Raiders, you actually don't know. Outside of that, it's also just a well-made, fun game. The third-person perspective makes it a lot less oppressive, and being able to see around corners and above cover evens the playing field in a lot of ways, and making the enemies legitimately dangerous is a simple way to encourage people to play together. This is maybe the ideal extraction shooter at the moment. It's a format that always kind of has limited appeal because it's really hardcore, but Arc Raiders is the extraction shooter for the people, not quite as punishingly difficult, and the player base is actually pretty friendly and helpful. They're not all selfish monsters, at least in solo. If you're playing in teams, it's still pretty much shoot on sight though. And number 3 is Hollow Knight Silksong, the long-awaited follow-up to 2017's Hollow Knight. Finally arrived in 2025, and it is a difficult game. It's so hard that it ended up being kind of divisive. We love it at GameRank, so pretty much unanimously. And the more time we've spent with it, the more we've come to appreciate just what they're doing here. It's a pretty different game from the original, actually. The movement and speed is more emphasized here. The abilities require a level of precision that was rarely necessary in the original game. The world is more linear, but also more varied, with even more little events and charming character interactions. There's more characters in general, too. More towns, little side quests, little stories to discover. Massive game, tons going on, but everything feels very carefully designed, even if it's particularly cruel, let's say. There's no getting around the fact that this game can be brutally hard. It's significantly tougher than the original game, but it's otherwise a brilliantly designed Metroidvania, exploding with content and personality, and maybe just shut the hell up. Some games are supposed to be hard. And number 2 is Clair Obscure Expedition 33. I did say turn-based games, like it's actually meaningful to say like among the best turn-based games of the year. We've been talking about this one pretty much non-stop all year. What else is there left to say about it? It's a game that takes heavy inspiration from JRPG classics of the past, but remixes the ideas to create something that feels fresh and new and exciting and extremely French in the most complimentary way I can come up with. Excellent writing, voice acting is excellent, music is excellent, pacing is excellent. It's just an excellent game. You get straight to the good stuff without a lot of messing around. World is huge, gives you tons of things to do off the beaten path, but it never feels like padding. It's an RPG that does not waste your time, tells a dramatic story that's always pushing forward while challenging you with traditional turn-based combat that incorporates some modern ideas. Parrying, which would you think that wouldn't add a whole lot, but adds a lot, actually changes a lot of things, makes it better than I think if it wasn't there. All around, just a fantastic RPG, deserving of all the accolades it's getting. And finally, at the number 1, Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. Kinda still shocked this thing exists. Easy to forget that it came out this year, too. These are weird games, Yakuza games, by default, but this one goes all the way off the deep end into pure nonsense. You're the mad dog of Shimano, and I must emphasize the here, who inexplicably becomes a pirate after washing up on an island in Hawaii. Not a time travel story, not some kind of fantasy land, it's Hawaii. Only there's pirate ships everywhere, and they're using literal sails and cannons, and they're fighting each other. Nothing about it makes any sense. The fact that it ties back into the plot of the last Yakuza only makes it more confusing. It's the sort of game where everyone inexplicably breaks out in a choreographed song for no reason, where Samoa Joe secretly runs a pirate den, where people can play mini games where they fire cannonballs for prizes. It's all completely absurd, and somehow still has the same old earnest Yakuza story, which only makes the whole thing feel stranger. For some people, it's a bridge too far for the series. It's just too dumb at this point, too weird for its own good. But I say they can get weirder. I don't know how, but I think they can do it, and I hope they do, because wow, was this fun. That's all I got for you, though. Lots of games for you to play this year. Honestly, if you managed to get to all 50 on this list, I'm impressed. What do you think, though? Leave us a comment. Let us know. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. Join the 1% Club and listen to The Falcon Show. We'll see you next time right here on GameRanks.